very first, first thing that the energy is really high. That's what happens with stuttering and my hands shaking. The first thing that happened was my heart palpitated just a little bit, which I already know how he passed. Go ahead and talk. What do you want to say? I want to cry. Strong emotion. As he says, I had to go, Dad. I had to go. And it had to go like that. We fulfilled our mission. We're here to leave our mark. Can't you see I was different?
We went to a conference at the ARE Conference Center to watch and hear Eben Alexander. Prior to his presentation, Suzanne Giesemann was doing a presentation.
I had just finished giving a presentation at a conference in Virginia Beach at the Association for Research and Enlightenment.
We were sitting in the first or second row, had never heard of Suzanne.
And we really knew we were in the right spot when she started off telling us how her stepdaughter was struck and killed by lightning.
I immediately clutched Mike's hand, and we just felt that connection right away. When she started talking about her background as a Navy commander and how she developed into a medium, that just hit hard with me, because I said, this woman's not making anything up, so she's got too much integrity to do that.
There was a big crowd, and I was very happy that a lot of people lined up because they wanted me to sign my book for them. And there was this one guy that I noticed hanging out at the back. He kept waiting to be at the end. People would come in the line and he would get at the end of the line.
We were so impressed that we waited at the end of the line until everybody was gone, and I approached her.
And when he finally came up to me, I couldn't help but notice this t-shirt he had. It was this giant wolf's face on the front of the shirt. And he was very shy and quiet. I found out pretty quickly that his son's nickname was Wolf, and that explained the t-shirt. But when he told me how he was killed, it really got my attention. He said that he was struck and killed by lightning. And that's the way my stepdaughter passed. And he was the first person I met who knew anybody who passed that way. I don't think he even cared about getting a book signed. He just had a question for me. He said, I want to know how my son knew
how, where, and when he was going to leave us. And she responded without hesitation, the soul knows.
At the time of her passing, our Susan was a sergeant in the Marine Corps. She was 6 months pregnant. She'd gotten married just 7 months before, and we were there at the wedding. And she was reporting for duty. Her husband had been on duty all night long, so she was all excited, crossing the flight line to go see him and take over her job that day. And out of the blue, a bolt of lightning came down. It wasn't even raining there, and just struck her.
The proudest day of my life was attending Susan's graduation from boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina. She had gone in as just a regular civilian 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and came out as a Marine, sharp as a tack. I was very, very proud of her, as I always will be.
As much as I loved and love Susan, the hardest part for me was seeing Ty, the man I love with all my heart, so destroyed. He always is my rock, but I don't know that I'd ever seen him cry to that point, and I was seeing him cry repeatedly. We went to the funeral home the night before the funeral, that was the chance for the family to see Susan.
It was denial. This could not possibly be happening. And it must have been a mistake. But of course it wasn't.
They had dressed her in her Marine Corps dress blues, and I recognized that uniform, but it was stunning to me that she didn't look like Susan at all. And I just stood there and I said, that's not Susan. The transformation, the difference between this vibrant, beautiful, sweet soul that we knew and what I was looking at, I couldn't reconcile the two. And that's what I just kept saying. That's not Susan. And I knew in that moment, having been raised with no religion, having no spiritual beliefs whatsoever, that there is something in all of us that gives the body life.
She was such a lively, vibrant, wonderful young girl that I hope that I could make contact with her one day myself.
Because there was this spark in Susan that lit everybody up. And I realized that it doesn't just make you vibrant, it gives the body the life that we know. And that was gone. I made a new mission right there, standing over her beautiful body. I'm going to find you. I was going to do it for me, and I was going to do it for Ty. I was going to prove to her, I'm going to let you know that your dad is okay. It was the most gut-wrenching and transformational moment of my life.
After Susan died and we went back to the States, Suzanne said, I'd like to go to a medium. And I didn't even ask her the question, what is a medium? Because I had no idea and I didn't want to display my ignorance. So we went to the medium and found out what a medium does. And it was life-altering.
Our first contact with Susan came through a medium. I waited until I could find someone who I knew could really see those in spirit. She had Ty sit in another room because she wasn't used to reading for two people at once. See, I figured I'd only get one shot to take Ty to a medium, and it needed to be good. It couldn't be just, oh, there's a woman here with gray hair, it's your grandmother and she loves you very much. And the woman suddenly shifted gears and she said, wait, there is someone here. It's a young woman in a brown uniform who seems to have passed rather suddenly, and I have this tingly electrical feeling running up and down my arms. And I suddenly have the headache of Zeus and Athena, and Zeus was the god of lightning bolts. And she said she appears to be in her 20s when she passed. This was so far from, this is your grandmother with gray hair, that the tears just started running down my face. I was sobbing, and I said, don't let her go anywhere. We've got to get Ty in here. You know, it wasn't until years later I found out that he didn't even know what a medium was. He went with me because he's learned to say what all good husbands say, yes, dear, you know. He went with me and is sitting there, and I say, Susan is here, and he came in and he sat down, and the woman says, well, now this young woman has gone and she's standing in front of you, sir, and she's saying, Daddy, Daddy. And she's crawling onto your lap, and she's put her arms around your neck and is leaning her head into your shoulder. And what she couldn't have known is, even though she was a tough-as-nails sergeant, that was exactly what Susan did the last time we were with her. She crawled onto Ty's lap and just said goodbye that way. But the clincher for me was when she said, "Wait, there's someone else here. She's bringing with her a little baby boy who she wants to introduce to you, but he's hanging back shyly, sucking his thumb as if he doesn't know you."
The medium went through describing her, describing Susan, and Liam Tyler, her unborn child, and said that she was dancing around the room calling me daddy, daddy, and then said she's sitting in your lap now, and I just lost it, absolutely lost it. It was very life-changing.
And that medium had no idea that Susan was 6 months pregnant with a baby boy. That whole experience, it changed my world. How do you process that other than knowing that what we already knew in our hearts was real, that Susan was still here? That was hardcore evidence. Those were things she could not have known. And it took me days to get out of the daze that reading put me into. I would not be a medium today doing the work I'm doing if she had not given us that kind of evidence. I knew that the soul knows because 2 days before my stepdaughter Susan passed, she came to me in a very real dream. She was at a party and she walked up to me with this beautiful smile and she said, "The baby and I are fine." I remember it was so real, I told Ty about it the next morning, but it was only after she passed that I realized she was giving our family a message. She was letting us know that her soul knew she was getting ready to leave us, but that, just like she said, the baby and I are fine. The baby and I are fine. The first time Susan showed up in my meditation, it was just a normal day, and here I am every day, still 3 years after her passing, saying, "Susan, show yourself to me." And I'm sitting there quietly, waiting, watching, listening with my eyes closed, and suddenly, here she is. I felt her over here. I felt her presence, but I heard her voice. It was her voice, and she just said, as casual as ever, "Hey, Suzanne," just like that. I just started crying. I said, "Susan, where have you been?" She just said, "Just tell my dad I'm okay." And I said, "You know how I work." Because by this time, I'm already doing readings for other people. Where has she been? I said, "Tell me something about your mom, your biological mother, that I can't possibly know. Give me current events." And she gave me 3 things in a row. She said, "Well, her cat is sick." She said there was something with a ladder. All I heard was ladder, and I knew that there was some event. And then she said she has Christmas lights up inside her house. And then we went on to have a conversation, and she just wanted to let us know that she was fine, and she's always been right here. So after I shared with Ty that Susan had just visited me, I said, "We've got to get your ex-wife on the phone." So we did, and I said, "Look, Susan's here, and I know that sounds crazy, but she says your cat is sick." And she said, "Oh, I just brought her home from the vet. She's on medication." And the second one with the ladder, she had just been at a wedding that weekend, and everybody was running around looking for this ladder, and nobody could find it, and it just showed up somewhere where nobody expected it. And then the third one was the Christmas lights. She said, "Oh, yeah, they run right up the banister along the stairs. We have them up year-round." So that was all the validation we needed. I knew in my heart she was right there, but now Ty could rely on the evidence to know that finally we'd made contact. I served in the Navy for 20 years as an officer. The goal of every Navy officer is to be a commanding officer. So I got to achieve that goal as commanding officer of a transient personnel unit ashore. And the greatest honor of all was being personally asked by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to be his aide de camp. The former Navy officer in me used to really look down on talks about spirit guides, but my guides made it so clear to me that we all have help from across the veil, with evidence I could not deny. Evidence in mediumship is absolutely critical for those who really need to know that the medium is not just reading their mind and that they are actually talking to their loved one across the veil. The evidence provides facts and details about the person who passed that the medium couldn't possibly know. And it needs to not be just generic. These need to stand out. I call them gold nuggets. I was very surprised one day sitting in my daily meditation to feel a presence step in that was so much more powerful than my regular spirit guides. And I know they don't mind me saying this, but I just said, "Who are you?" It felt both masculine and feminine. And they said, "We are a collective consciousness of guides, both masculine and feminine, who are here to help you write and write and write our words of wit and wisdom. And you will call us Sanaya." So what do I do as soon as I come out of meditation? I Google Sanaya to see what it means, and it's a Sanskrit name that means eminent, distinguished, and of the gods, but it also means one worth knowing, which I thought was a pretty cool name. But the real kicker was several years later when a friend came to me and she said, "You know, I found a different meaning for Sanaya. It means flash of lightning." So right there we have this amazing connection between Sanaya, Susan, and Wolf. I'd set up the reading for Mike and Beth for a Saturday in July. Two mornings before that reading, I was lying in bed. I woke up right at sunrise and was overcome by a wave of dizziness. I knew by then that this means there's a spirit here. And when I asked, "Who are you?" I saw Mike and Beth's image in my mind's eye, and I knew this is their son.
I learned to be quiet when Suzanne grabs her pad at night in the middle of the night, totally dark, and I hear her pen scratching. She never turns on a light. I know that she's getting some sort of a message from spirit, potential people like Wolf, and it has happened fairly regularly over the years.
And I said, "You're Wolf, aren't you?" And so, hoping that Ty wouldn't wake up, I leaned over and I just started writing the things that he was sharing with me. I filled up 8 sheets of paper with Wolf's input, and I knew that every time I turned the page, I'm making noise, but Ty just stayed quiet beside me, and I got more and more excited as I was getting this information because they were really unusual pieces of evidence. He was talking about hieroglyphics and druids and showing me spirals and talking about things that were not your ordinary kinds of evidence that I get in readings. He told me he was Mike Jr., and I realized to that point I didn't know what his real name was. I only knew him as Wolf. He talked about chiseling in stone. I could feel his personality, how kind he was, but I could tell he was a loner. He showed me a fish mouth and gave me the awareness that he wouldn't even want to hurt a fish with a hook. He tried to give a word to me, and I wasn't sure what he was getting across, but I wrote down what it sounded like, and it sounded like pajamas. So I wrote, "Pajamas? Jama Mama?" He showed me a red radio flyer wagon. He emphasized the wheels. He emphasized the peace sign. And when he drifted away, he made this symbol that I knew from sign language is the "I love you" sign, and truly emphasized that. When he showed me all these things, I knew that he wanted these messages delivered to his parents, but the peace part, that was on a grand scale. All in all, he gave me 46 pieces of evidence and said, "Have my parents score this." I was really excited about this because I wasn't getting any feedback from his parents, and nobody could say that I was reading their minds.
He says stuttering is the energy. Some people would have said that that was crazy, but he couldn't stop the flow because he couldn't break the connection with the other dimension. He was in both, that's it, in both worlds at once, all the time, like he couldn't turn it off. It was very busy in here, he says, very busy in his head. Okay, okay.
He always said that, yeah.
Really? Okay. Wow. And you can see how I was in both worlds and unable to function on the normal baseline. But there was nothing wrong with my heart.
When I started reading, I first put my clients at ease. I helped them raise their energy by connecting our hearts. And then I asked them to join me in sending love to their loved ones in spirit as I invite them in. And I literally picture them merging their energy fields with mine so that I can feel their personality and start sharing with their loved ones here what they want us to know. When the energy's that high, the information just flows. And Wolf was showing me images of him writing, and not just poetry, but all kinds of words and drawings. I saw spirals. He showed me triangles, all kinds of shapes. And he showed me that all of this was on loose leaf type paper. And I remember saying, papers, papers, papers.
Papers, 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 papers. You talked about the poems. He's showing me stacks of loose papers, but you've gathered them.
She said, I'm just seeing papers, 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 loose leaf papers everywhere. And that's how he wrote. He would write on whatever piece of paper, or he would tear it out of a notebook. It was never orderly. It was just papers everywhere.
And he's saying, thanks for keeping it safe, Dad. Thanks for keeping it safe.
He says, thank you for keeping them safe. There's something about that word safe. Does that make sense?
I took them all and I have them at the house. I took everything of his.
He showed me circles and planets, and he said, this is where I came from. Wolf said to me, I was in two worlds at once. It was very busy in here. And he pointed at his head just like that. What was a great validation was later Mike sent me a photo of Wolf doing exactly that and saying, it was very busy in here. I had never felt a more powerful spirit in a reading. And I could feel that Wolf was this immensely kind and gentle soul. Wolf told me that he was wired differently, that he had trouble in school and couldn't hold a job. All of these things were validated by Mike and Beth.
In the reading, Wolf told us he had to go, and he had to go that way so people would notice his life.
Suzanne had said she heard from Wolf that he was helping people on the other side, especially young people who complete suicide.
I had just done 3 readings in a row with mothers whose sons had completed suicide.
And he also said he had to come and live the life he lived and go through those difficult teenage years to understand how they had trouble fitting into society, and was helping them process that on the other side.
He told me he had completed his mission on Earth.
He struggled to fit in. He was not able to go to mainstream school systems and follow their rigid rules. He couldn't hold down a job and be able to focus on one task for 8 hours. He would see somebody that looked sad and he'd wander off and go and talk to them and try to help them. And so he struggled just fitting into the norm of this society.
I learned from Mike and Beth that his friends and anybody who knew him talked about how kind he was. And just like in that unexpected drop-in in the early morning hours, he brought up the red wagon again, and again focusing on the circles, as he then expanded to show me more figures from sacred geometry, the spirals and the triangles. And I knew that there was some message in there, and he was getting to the fact that it was all about the oneness. It was a friend of mine who enjoyed playing detective who discovered that there was a movie about a radio flyer wagon that was all about the desire to go home. Wolf said, the way I passed, being struck by lightning, was so that others will pay attention and that we're supposed to share his story. Wolf told me that he was tethered to the other side and couldn't stop the flow, that he was not of this world.
He was diagnosed mentally ill because of the voices he heard, because of his inability to stay in normal classrooms and do normal behaviors.
I know he brought it up so that we would have greater empathy for those diagnosed with mental illness and come to see it in a new light, that maybe some people are just in two worlds at once.
He was constantly channeling from the other side these higher energies, and he just did not know how to deal with all that information coming in.
I couldn't believe that because the person I was feeling from across the veil was the most powerful spirit I had ever encountered to that point.
It gave us a new perspective on mental illness. Not all that are diagnosed mentally ill are truly sick. There are people like him, he said, that are just channeling higher vibrations constantly, and it's hard to process that and live on the normal baseline.
The thing that I love about Wolf is that he was diagnosed as schizophrenic. He was a lovely human being. Everyone describes him as kind and loving and compassionate, and he was creative, and he was a poet, and he had all this. It's like this and. It's like the and thing that I think is so important. And then when he crossed over and Suzanne begins to talk to him, she understands that he is like the most elevated, powerful spirit she had ever brought through to that point. So you have this objectively not what you would want to be human, and yet he's this too. And I think that is so important for all of us. The message, one of the most important messages of Wolf's life to me is that we don't have to be perfect.
Wolf told me that he may have been diagnosed with schizophrenia, but there was nothing wrong with his heart. He told us, I'm at home now. I'm at peace now.
Wolf said that it's all about love. It's all about love, and that is the most powerful message that any of us can get from him.
He had a funny way of showing, I love you.
At the end of our visits, Wolf and I had this special sign. We would give each other a hug and then tell each other this way how much we loved each other.
Which was exactly what he showed me in that drop-in. And I said, well, that's a good way to wrap this up. I had a lot of time to think about that schizophrenia diagnosis later, and the way he said I was in two worlds at once. What stuck with me after that reading was just how powerful he was, and I couldn't get out of my mind how somebody that felt that divine had been diagnosed as mentally ill while he was here in a body. The whole point of evidential mediumship is to prove that this thing we call death is really just a transition to the next phase of our life. And the evidence does that. What was this thing with pajama, jama mama? And why did he show a bird flying into a window? And he also showed me things with Native Americans that he didn't really have a history of talking about while he was here. He showed me archery and a target and really focused on the center. These kinds of things hung in the air unsolved like a big mystery. And the last thing he said as I felt his energy withdrawing was, I'll be around. Ty and I were traveling around the country the whole time the whole story with Wolf was unfolding, and our travels took us to Whitefish, Montana. We had been there several years earlier, and as we were going down the road, I suddenly remembered a metaphysical shop in the town that I had visited. There was something for me there in that store. I walked into the store, and I started looking around, waiting for that catch, that feeling like, this is why you're here. The shop owner came out of the back and she glanced at me and she said, "I remember you." The owner of the store introduced herself as Velvet. And she said, "We're supposed to talk." And suddenly I knew she was the reason I was called to the store. And she said, "You want to get together?" And I said, "We're supposed to." And she said, "Well, when do you want to meet?" And I said, "Well, tomorrow's my birthday, and some pretty cool things have happened on my birthday in recent years, so why don't we meet tomorrow morning?" And we set a date to meet in a local coffee shop the next morning.
When Suzanne came in, she stands like she's been in the military. And, her spine is straight, this energy. When your spine is straight, as a Kundalini yoga teacher, when your spine is straight, then all this energy can move. However, you can tell that she's heart, that she's got the heart. And what an amazing combination.
The next day, I got to the coffee shop before Velvet had arrived, so I chose a table off to the side so we could have a private conversation. When she showed up, we sat down, and I remember she looked at me and she said, "So what are we supposed to talk about?"
And then she looked at me and she said, "I think I'm supposed to tell you about this guy named Wolf."
So I began by telling her how Mike and Beth and I met at the conference, and I went through the whole story. And when I told her that Wolf had been struck and killed by lightning, like my stepdaughter Susan, she reached up to a necklace that she was wearing.
After she told me how Wolf died, I asked her if she knew what my necklace was.
And I said no. And she said, "It's a fulgurite." And I didn't know what a fulgurite was. And she said, "It's a crystal that's formed by sand when struck by lightning. Would you like to have it?" I couldn't think of a better gift in that moment. I wanted that more than anything because to me it symbolized my stepdaughter and all of this wonder that was unfolding with Wolf. I couldn't believe that she was going to offer me this gift. And she took it off then and there and said, "I have no attachment to things," and handed it to me. When I described to Velvet Wolf's final drawing with the eye and the yin-yang symbol in the middle, she discerned that Wolf had come to help all of us find our way back into balance. The yin-yang symbol is the perfect symbology for balance. She then went on to tell me that it was part of her mission to help bring our world into balance. So I could see, once again, the web of connections at work here.
I told Suzanne that the eye of God is the heart. Suzanne told me that that gave her goosebumps. I told her that I called them truth shivers.
Meeting Velvet helped me to be aware of where I was still in my old mindset of limitation. She showed me that when we open our minds to possibilities, we create wondrous possibilities for ourselves. At the time of Wolf's surprise visit, there were certain details that just didn't make sense, like that pajama jama mama phrase that I heard and messages chiseled in stone. One day I was passing by a Barnes & Noble store and I had this knowing, there is a book for you in there. So I went straight to the metaphysical section, and I had an experience unlike any I'd ever had in my life. Suddenly, one of the books right in front of me moved. I saw it move from right to left and back again, and I even heard the pages rustle on the shelf. I remember turning to the side and thinking, did anybody else see that? But when I looked back, I didn't know which book it was. But the amazing thing was, it did it again. It moved exactly like it did before. And some people might say that was an illusion, but I know that those in spirit can manipulate our senses, and they were trying to get my attention. So I bought that book. I was a little disappointed because it had to do with the Mayan calendar and extraterrestrials and topics that I try to stay away from. But when I got it home and I started looking through it, I felt Wolf's presence. and he said, go directly to the photos in the middle. And I looked, and you could see there was a section of photos. And when I turned to it, I saw this figure from a place called Pumapunku in South America, a place I'd never heard of. I'd never seen this figure before. But when I looked at the caption at the bottom, I about fell over. It was a statue called Pachamama. Pajama Jama Mama. This was it. This is what Wolf was trying to tell me about this figure. And when I read about it, turned the page, it turns out that Pachamama is chiseled in stone along the back. I knew that we had solved one of the mysteries. I didn't know why he brought it up, but I could tell that I was being led clue by clue to figure out what were those things he gave me in the surprise visit that nobody knew about. After we left Lake Louise, Ty and I headed south and came back into the United States. We had to make a detour for repairs to our RV. And Ty was a bit bent out of shape because that was a hassle, but I kept hearing, there is a gift for you in Colorado, where we were headed. That gift turned out to be a book given to me by one of the followers of my work called The Tribe of Many Colors. Until I received the gift of this book, I didn't understand why Wolf kept referencing Mayans and Native people. I couldn't believe it when I turned the page, and there it was laid out before me, that there were two great civilizations, the Mayans and Aboriginal people, like our Native Americans, who are still living from the heart. It practically jumped off the page at me because this was it. This was the key, that we are out of balance because we're in the head and not living from the heart. Suddenly, everything fell into place. I had a stack of books on the go at that time, but I was absolutely guided to start reading that book right away. The author, Keisha Crowther, even brought up Pachamama, Mother Earth. All those bits of evidence from across the veil had shown up in a book about Mayan history, and now I knew why. We walk in two worlds at once, this physical world and the spirit world. And as if to prove to me that I was truly meant to read this book, I turned to the end, and there was the phrase, "The time of the lone wolf is over." On the day Wolf was killed by lightning, he was sitting in his favorite cafe in Plymouth, Massachusetts, called the Blue Blinds Bakery. Talking with friends, he suddenly stood up and said to them, "I have to go now. Imagine those as your last words." He started walking towards the cemetery where he used to go to meditate. Along the way, he stopped in at a gift shop and left a heart-shaped stone for the owner on the counter.
It was like raining, 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 and then there was like this one big clap of thunder and a bolt of lightning. And then it just went back to regular rain again. And that bolt of lightning is what took Wolf.
The police report said that the storm that came over the town at that point was very localized, but it happened to go right over Burial Hill, and there was just one single crack of thunder that those in the town heard. That was the lightning strike that took Wolf.
It was early evening, and Beth and I were relaxing around the house, and we heard a knock at the front door. There were two men dressed in plain clothes who identified themselves as police detectives, and they asked if we had a son named Mike Pasakarnis. So we invited them in. We went to a side room. I sat down at the table with Beth, and then they told us that they had found Wolf's body at the base of a tree. I just was in total shock and disbelief, but the moment they said, "We know it's your son because he looks just like you," a sword pierced my heart. And that's the moment that hell right. But thank God, Wolf revealed himself after that, and here we are. The morning after we were notified by the police detectives, Beth and I got in the car and drove up to Plymouth. We wanted to know where they found Wolf. So we parked and we drove up the hill, and there was his hat at the base of one of the trees, along with some latex gloves, which we assumed the crews must have left. So this is how we identified where Wolf left us. The police detectives also told us we were not allowed to go to his apartment, which we really wanted to go see.
We were just kind of lost that day once we had spent some time at the tree and didn't find any answers there. We kind of just wanted to wander in Plymouth and walk around where Wolf used to roam. And we happened by a florist shop, and I said, "Mike, let's go in and get something to leave at the tree." I think the florist actually gave us the 2 red roses. I just wanted one of each of us to have a rose that symbolized our love for Wolf. And so we had one each, and we went back up to the tree and we each planted one of the roses at the base of the tree. Just for lack of anything else to be able to do at that point. We had never bought flowers for anyone before or done anything like that to honor anybody in our family. So it just felt like we need to each have an I love you rose for Wolf. And so when we left the tree, there were just 2 beautiful red roses planted right at the base of it. They were for Wolf. Later in the afternoon, we received a call from the detective saying, "We just heard back from the coroner's office, and your son passed from a lightning strike." They had actually seen the hole in his boot where the lightning had passed through. And so it was no longer under investigation, and they said, "You can come and pick up his wallet and anything he had on him, and also his apartment key, and you're welcome to go in his apartment now."
If you have never been in Wolf's den, as he called his apartment, you would be shocked walking through the door. The first thing you would notice is every single inch of every wall, every ceiling, even the closets, had his poetry, his drawings, other posters, or material related to nature. It was just stunning.
The next morning, we went straight up and went in his apartment and immediately were struck by how neat and clean it was. There wasn't a dirty dish in the sink. His bed was made, which he never did, but mostly we were struck by the neatness and the orderliness of it, because that was not how Wolf lived.
And when we would go up and visit him every couple of weeks, he would move this artwork around, and we never knew why, but he would change the scenes from one wall to the next wall the entire time he lived there.
Mike was kind of stuck in the living room, and I had wandered back to what I call the nature room. I'm not sure if Wolf ever called it that. I think he might have. But basically every inch of that room was covered with nature pictures. Some of them he had drawn, but mostly magazine pictures of animals and all kinds of nature scenes. But there was only one poem in that room, and it was a poem we had never, ever seen before. And Mike was with him just a few days prior to that, so he knew it wasn't there then. And when I read the poem, it struck me, and I just called out to Mike, "Come here, you have to see this."
And I heard Beth, "Mike, you gotta come in here." With urgency, I ran back there because she sounded rather disturbed, and she was pointing at the wall and said, "You gotta read this." I saw the last two lines and said, how would he possibly know this was gonna happen to him?
In that room also, facing the poem, was his chair, as if here's where you sit and here's what you look at. Directly behind that was a cutout of his t-shirt with the lightning strike on it that he had just worn that previous weekend, and he had cut that shirt up and put that directly across from his poem in the nature room. So the whole room was set up, I felt. Sit here and look at this poem, because it's meaningful.
He had left everything in order. In the military, we call that two blocking everything, where you just make your bed just right and you put the things on the dresser just right. Mike also told me that just a few weeks before he passed, he stopped moving the artwork around in his room. He knew he was never coming back. Wolf's final poem said, "Spirit of great healer, awaken within this heart. Peace and tranquility flow like water. The time has come to allow the light of nature to free my soul."
If you look at Wolf's last piece of art, there's a picture of the tree, which is where he was struck by lightning. And next to that tree, at the base of that tree, are two flowers, which his dad and his stepmom had placed there after his death. By looking at that piece of art, I personally believe that he knew how things were going to happen and what would happen afterwards. I believe that that was Wolf's way of saying, "I know it's going to be okay, Dad."
In Wolf's drawing, he showed the exact tree where he was struck and killed by lightning. And you can see the two roses in that drawing placed there just like Mike and Beth put them after he was killed. How did they know to do that? This is something that was seen at the soul level that was going to happen. Wolf knew that they would place those roses at the site of his death, even though there was no tradition of having done that in the past. Throughout the ages, the yin-yang symbol has been the perfect representation of balance and harmony. And that ended up being one of the main reasons he came back, to show us that we are out of balance as a species. that we need to come back into alignment and attune with our true nature, which is the soul. The way to find the balance is to not spend so much time in our heads thinking and feeling like we have to rely on our brains for insights. We shift our awareness to the heart and we tune into guidance that comes from something so much beyond this objective world. Wolf came to show us that we are out of alignment with our true nature because we're placing too much emphasis on our intellect, on technology, and on information, rather than the insights that are coming from the heart. As a result, we are unbalanced spiritually, prisoners of the head.
I think the fact that he knew that everything was connected was the interesting thing about all his creativity. His apartment was like an art studio. I mean, he had every wall and ceiling and everything had his artwork on it. But if you really paid attention to the way he had it put together, there was a method to it, right? And that method was to show the interconnectedness of all things.
I support my friends and who supports me, and this is what this is about. It's called Dark Realm State. It is easy to say to everyone that I am fine and feeling good inside. Why explain the truth? Supporting, loving, and compassionate friend is what I have displayed to all around. When I feel broken, dead inside, and emotion drained, who can I call or talk to for some support? Dealing with my life, take it all in, asking for help or support, deeply feeling these lonely, dreadful nights through nonstop storms in therapy. Thank you.
We were, as his parents, trying to give him the best life and get him to have a good independent lifestyle. We were trying to fit him into a box that he couldn't fit into. And I think he found his people in Plymouth towards the end that accepted him for who he was, that noticed things about him that we as parents didn't notice. And I think he finally felt accepted.
He was otherworldly. He had these unusual eyes, and they were very penetrating eyes. And I remember thinking, if I'm being honest, you kind of wondered if Wolf was an angel masquerading as a human. I mean, he was that unusual. I know that sounds hyperbole, that sounds like it's over the top, but honestly, that was my honest impression of him.
What made Wolf special to me, and I think other people would share the same feeling because we talked about it all the time, he cared so much about other people. He helped people. And he cared about animals and trees and everything that had a life. He just was a wonderful person.
It's okay to be different, and it's okay not to have a label. It's okay to just want to do good. He brought out a lot of good in people, and he saw good in people, which helped other people see it in themselves, I think, is probably one of the strongest things he did for people. And that's probably what I loved about Wolf the most.
He had an innate sense of awareness that most people don't have at that age. He knew about the world when he was so young. And I wasn't quite sure how he got that way, how he got that knowledge. So he was a puzzle to me as well.
There was an aspect of Wolf that didn't really think he was going to be here a long period of time. And I think it was like, I've fulfilled what I needed to. And I have other places to go. And I think there was an aspect of Wolf that felt like maybe I can help more from the other side. I can bring that message out more by being over there.
I remember him in the most gentle instances because that made up the whole of who he was. He was something spiritual, something mystical, even though we had overlooked that fact. We would humor him because he was a great eccentric. He was such a gentle soul. You couldn't break his heart. He was a force of nature, taken by a force of nature. And there's no better end to someone as magnetic and miraculous, really, as Wolf.
I loved Wolf. I don't know how anybody could not if they were close to him.
There will never be another Wolf. Every single individual is their individual, but some people just shine more brightly, unfortunately, beyond their time. He loved us, and we still love him. Wolf was love.
I really believe that Wolf set all of this up in so many ways, but I think probably first and foremost, Wolf came to Suzanne so that he could let his dad and his stepmom know that he's not only okay, but he still has a plan and a purpose. Wolf came and lived this life to show us that we don't have to be perfect while we're in these bodies. We are already divine.
For the last 10 months, been battling a fairly aggressive form of leukemia that came out of nowhere. And I've had a number of setbacks which have forced me to look at my own mortality square in the face. And Wolf has well prepared us to not fear dying. So I now know, not just believe, but know, there is a greater reality beyond the physical death of this body. I will live on. 14 years ago now, I could not have said that. I would have been very fearful of my physical passing. Thank you, Wolf.
Thank you, Suzanne. And thank you, Wolf.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you for what you've given me. And thank you, Wolf, for this incredible healing that you've given to all of us.
The takeaway from Wolf's teaching, to me, has become the basis of all of my teaching. And it's very simple. Number one, we're not only human. The evidence that he brought through shows that very clearly. We're also souls. Number two, we're part of one big web connecting all that is. And number three, because we're all connected, nothing is separate. And where there's no separation, we call that love. So love is the creative and healing force of the universe. I felt his powerful presence begin to withdraw. I didn't want him to go. I didn't want to break the link. I wanted to hear more, to enjoy his loving energy longer. But I sensed that he had shared all that he had come to share. I see now, I said, as my heart overflowed. I see. Bingo, Wolf said, as he pointed at the center of my chest and faded away. Thank you, Wolf.
So fireflies in the night. I wanna go to the light. I just think I might go home. I saw the clouds gather round me, like a circle of friends. The light of nature had found me. Now the journey never ends. Underneath the tree where I had to be. Now my soul is free